I'm Joe Nutkins, and tonight I'm going to be taking you through some nice gentle exercises to help with doggy fitness. I'm going to be joined by my two Norwich Terriers. I have Merlin currently with his bum to you, who is here, and I have Ripley, who is here, and Ripley is going to be 2 tomorrow, so she's joined this for her birthday, aren't you? So just a very brief introduction on who I am, just to help you with why you should watch this video. I'm not only a certified dog trainer and accredited with the Kennel Club, but I'm also a certified professional canine fitness trainer, and I've been doing that for several years now, and my passions lie within the fitness side and keeping dogs nice and healthy and keeping them going for longer, as well as my work that I do with senior dogs. So although I do a lot of work with senior dogs, the canine fitness side of things is for all ages, so from puppies to adult dogs to senior dogs as well. Okay, so if you're watching this, hopefully it's because you have a dog and you would like to try doing something a bit different with them. The people that I have coming through to do canine fitness vary. So we have people that come because they like learning new things with their dogs. We have people come because their dogs need a little bit of help, so they're working on keeping their weight managed and nice and low. They are working on their dogs' confidence levels and doing lots of different things with them. It could be that they have got a dog that's starting to age and they want to keep their fitness levels up. It could also be that you've got a dog that does canine sports, so things like agility and heel to music, flyball, hoopers, things like that, or you take your dogs out for long walks and hikes and those sorts of things, then doing some fitness in between, especially at the moment where there isn't the competitions to go to and you might not be able to get to your classes. It just means you can top up their general training really easily, and in a way that you can enjoy as much as your dogs as well. Okay, so we're going to go through some warm-up exercises, then some main exercises, and then some cool-down exercises as well, and you don't need to have any specialist equipment at all. All right, I have got certain equipment that I'll be using for this because I like to use certain equipment when I'm demonstrating, so that people can see, when I do this, I have got the stuff, I have got what's needed, but I'm also going to show you alternatives that you can use with household equipment. As long as it's safe and appropriate for your size dog, then you can use it. Okay, so the first thing that I ask people to do, the first thing that I ask people to do is to make sure their dog is slightly warmed up before we even start the actual physical warm-up. So that is, if your dog is napping before you decide to do something like this, or they've been chilling outside in the sun, then let them move first. So get them up, maybe take them outside, see if they want to go to the loo, let them have a quick mooch around the garden, or let them follow you around the house while you go and get ready and go and get your treats ready and come back. So they've at least had a bit of a natural bit of movement, which is a really good way to start getting that body warmed up. And we want the body warm, that gets the circulation going, it gets everything moving, nice and loosened up. It does, and it really does help prevent injuries, but I will go more into that in the next section when we talk about our warm-ups. There are different types of exercises for warm-ups and cool-downs, and it is important to warm your dogs up, and the exercises we're going to do for this, you can actually apply them to if you're doing dog sports or you're going out with the dog for a long walk. You can actually put some of these in at the start before you do the activity, and that will help with injury prevention as well. Okay, so what you're going to need is your dog. You're going to need some way of rewarding them. Typically with canine fitness, the quickest and easiest way is with treats, so very small pieces of treat, or your dog's kibble. You can use toys, but what I would say is if your dog gets very excited over the sight of a toy, then it's not ideal for fitness, because you want it to be quite steady and controlled, for want of a better term. We don't want your dog leaping off things and slipping and sliding and potentially hurting themselves, so we want it to be a little bit calmer. However, if they will work for a toy and then get the toy at the end of the exercise, and I have worked with dogs with toys before for fitness, then that is absolutely fine to do. Okay, but watch and then you can decide what you want to use yourself. All right, so you're going to get yourself comfy, grab your dog, grab your treats, have a watch of the video. You can stop and start anytime you want. This will be on a replay afterwards as well, and then if you want to join in and take part, please do, and we will work you through it. Okay, so let's get started with our warm-up. So we are going to start with some dynamic stretching. So dynamic stretching is when we lure the dog and guide them to do the stretch themselves, and this is good for your warm-up because what we want to do is for the dogs to stretch in a way that's comfortable for them and not overextending or overflexing at this stage. So we're going to start with a figure of 8, getting your dogs to go around 2 items. So the items can be whatever you want them to be. Okay, yes, we're going to do it now. So ordinarily I would be using 2 cones, and the 2 cones would just go out. You want them to be a little bit of a distance between each other so your dogs can get between them, but also enough space so they can go around the back depending on what is in the space that you are in. I've got small dogs, so I don't need a lot of space. Excuse me, but it doesn't need to be miles apart because we're not going to be sending our dogs to race round because this is a warm-up still. Okay, so even if your dogs have done going around an item before, when it's a warm-up we are luring and guiding so we can control how fast or slow they go. So just to show you what this looks like, and then I'm going to show you some examples of other items that you could be using. So I've got Ripley here because Merlin's decided he's going to have a nap, and so all we're doing is start with your dog in front of you here. We're going to guide them to go around, nice and steady, and treat. And then we're going to guide them around the other direction, nice and steady, and then treat. Okay, now if your dog is doing particularly well, then you can ask them to do the whole thing as a figure of 8. So we can ask them to go around and then around, okay? But can you see how slowly I'm getting my hand to go so that Ripley is following it? Just to give you an idea of comparison, can you go around? Good girl, good go. Good girl, and circle. And go around. And circle. That's how Ripley normally does a figure of 8, okay? But for a warm-up, I don't want her going quickly, so we're going to go nice and steady. Hello, Merlin. And we're going to slow her right down like that, okay? Hello, you're going to do the next bit, yeah. So, if you don't have cones at home, don't worry, because you can use other items instead. So let's put them to one side. So I'm going to be using a garden ornament, like this, mind out. And I'm going to be using a bag of dog food. So it just depends what you have in your house that you can be using. So let's get rid of Rippers Chippers. Up there for me, darling. And then, no, it's up there, find it, I promise. So Merlin, go round, good boy, and then circle round, good boy. So nice and steady, go round, good, and go circle, good boy. So again, Merlin would normally go much quicker, go round, and circle, and go round. But I don't want him to go that speed for a warm-up. Go find it, Rippers Chippers, Ripley, go find. And then go circle, good boy, and go round. So I'm putting my hand in the way so he can only go the speed that I want him to go. Okay, so that can then gradually help him to start warming up. All right, and you can do a few of those. So if your dogs haven't done that before, concentrate on just helping them to get around those items. Thank you, darling. And praising, and you might do maybe 4 of each side. If your dog's getting on okay or they've done it before, then you might do that as a complete figure of 8, and again you could do 4 to 6 of those as part of a nice gentle warm-up. So by doing things like this, it's a dynamic stretch because we're luring the dog, but they are the ones that are doing the stretches. So we're stretching it all down by the neck and the head. We're going down all the body. We're stretching at the legs, the toes, the back end, really, really, really nicely. Okay, and by doing that kind of dynamic action, it then not only warms up the body and gets the circulation going, but it also enhances your dog's movement as well. So you can actually benefit them in doing other things later on. So we start there with the figure of 8, and then we're going to move on to our next exercise. So you've done a few reps of those. I know, I've just got so much stuff around Merlin. Head turns we're going to do next. So again, this is a nice passive one, dynamic one, sorry, because your dog is doing all the work. I tend to do my dogs like this from a peekaboo position, which is where Merlin currently is, but you don't have to do it here if that's problematic for you at all. I'll show you what the exercise looks like and then I'll go through how to teach it. So ideally what we want is our dogs in a stand, a sit or a down. We're going to bring the treat down so that your dog's head is neutral, not looking up. And we're going to ask your dog to turn to the side, give the treat, head down a bit, turn to the side and give the treat. What a clever boy you are. So to get him there, I'm going to guide behind my leg, bring my treat through the middle so he ends up in that peekaboo, and then I've got a treat in each hand. Treat, bring the head down a bit, turn, treat and turn. What a good boy. Now, the reason why I put mine in peekaboo is because if I don't do that, there's a very high chance that when I turn the head, I'm just going to get the whole body turning, which isn't necessarily what I want for this stretch. So by putting them in that peekaboo position, it just means the bum can't swing out and I get the stretch that I'm after, okay? If your dog isn't going to go anywhere, or they're sitting or laying down, then you don't have to have them at peekaboo at all. And you can actually do it so that you are kind of in the way of your dog as well. Ripley. So if I had Ripley across me here and I bring the head out, good girl. Her bum can't move because my body is now in the way, as is Merlin. Good girl. There's my clever girl. So let's turn you around that way. Merlin, go get the treat. And then like that. Oh, cheat. She cheated. Come round. Good girlie. Merlin, go get it. Good girl. Okay, so I'm just holding her bum. All I'm doing is put my hand in the way so she can't turn. Otherwise, again, I'll just get that. Because I do a lot of things with these guys. Every tiny little change in body language means something else for my dogs. So I do have to be careful that I do help them out a little bit here and there. So with the head stretch then, all we're looking for is that the nose goes towards the shoulder, nothing too further down. Again, we bring the treat down so it's kind of neutral here rather than the head looking up. Otherwise they're just going to do that, which is still a stretch, but it's not what we're actually after. So the head comes down to neutral and we bring the treat round just so that it doesn't go any further than your leg basically if they're at peekaboo. And it's just enough that the head comes round almost towards the shoulder, just for a second, give the treat, they'll go back to neutral, and the same here. Now if your dogs know how to do a nose touch to your hand, then you can use that instead if you prefer. So if for any reason you don't want to lure, or if you're using a toy to reward your dog. So Merlin knows a hand touch, so all I'll do is touch, Merlin, yes, good boy. And Merlin touch, is there, yes, good boy. Ready? I'm dropping the treats. Touch, yeah, no, touch, yes. And touch. And again, I'm bringing my hand down first to help Merlin to get it in the right place, aren't I? So we do those head stretches again a few times each side, so maybe 3 or 4 times for each direction, a couple more if your dogs have done that before. They're not holding it for any length of time at the moment, like I say, it is a dynamic stretch, so we don't want to keep them there for too long. It's just enough for them to have a stretch and then go back into neutral again. Okay, so that's our second exercise. Give that a go, see how your dog gets on with it. And then our last exercise for our warm-up is ideally using something for your dog to step up and over, okay? Now, again, normally if I was working on this in a class, I would be using something like an aerobic step, okay? But we're actually going to use something a little bit different for this one. So I've got hold of one of my favourite books that I've ever owned, which is my Encyclopedia of the Dog. It's my favourite book because it's a nice size, it's hardback, so it's sturdy, it's a really good size for my own dogs, and it's not too high, but it is high enough to actually have some impact. And all you want is something for your dogs to step on, walk across and step off, okay? Part of your warm-up, ideally, should have something that mimics the main activity your dog is going to do. So because I know we're going to do some paws up in the next part, I want my dogs to be able to do paws up, which Merlin's doing on his own now anyway. But I want to make it a bit different. So I also know that this book is a little bit slip-sliding, so I'm putting just a rubber target on top. I also make sure that my dog's paws are clipped underneath, so they haven't got lots of extra fur here, which means they're more likely to slip on something. Keeping that clip nice and short means they don't slip so much. It means they're less likely to kind of go around at a funny angle and put a leg out and then strain something. So we've got the bonus of 2 things. I've got something non-slip and they've got non-slip feet as well. So that's my target there. It could just be you wrap something around it perhaps. And all we're going to do, and I'll show you this from a couple of angles, is we're going to ask your dogs to put their paws up and then walk across and off. Okay, so nice and simple. Ripley? She says, I'm nice and simple, mummy. And then walk off. So you'll notice I'm bringing the head downwards. You don't need the item to be particularly tall at all. If you've got a puppy, be the smallest of items, to be honest with you. If you've got a tall dog, adult dog with no history of any injury or anything, then you could use something taller, so the aerobic step is great for that. You know, if you've got a lowish pause table, they could walk up and walk off of there. But ideally, because we want to protect that cervical spine, we guide them up, pause, and then the head goes down a bit to guide them off again. So I'll show you that with Merlin when Ripley's got off. Good girl. Come over here. Pause up. Good boy. And walk off. Good boy. Okay. So while they're doing this, they're then stepping up and stepping down. And that's really, really good for body awareness. Not just the stepping up part, but stepping up and stepping down one after another is really, really good for body awareness. So Ripley's there. And then off she comes. The other end. Very good. Clever pair, aren't you? So if I was doing that with the aerobic step, just to show you it at a slightly higher level, can you get off of there, please? Mind your bed, mind your head, mind. Then this is a little bit taller, as you can see. So then I would be making really sure, right, Ripley over here, that I guide my dog's head really low so that they're not going to risk hurting themselves. Good girl, okay? If I didn't do that, if I let them just come across to here, then you end up with a really sharp cervical spine, so that area at the back of the neck there, and that's not overly good for them. All right, so if your item is a little bit taller, then try to make sure you're luring them pointing downwards with your treat or your toy so that they're heading down as they're coming off, okay? And in case I haven't already mentioned it, I don't think I have actually, which is unusual for me, please try and make sure whatever you're working on is a non-slip surface. So if you're working in a room that has got a bit of a slippery floor, pop a yoga mat or two down, or if you've got a rug from another room you could bring in just to make sure your dog isn't slipping when they're coming on and off the equipment, particularly things like the figure of 8 that we did earlier. All right, so again, a few of those, so you know, 4 or 5 in each direction of those. I don't know what we're doing, we're having a wrestle now. Have a try with those, and then what we're going to do next is our main exercises. Okay, so hopefully you're all warmed up and ready to go. Right, let's get started with our main exercises then. So you'll notice I've now got a blue platform in the middle of the floor. You don't need to do anything like this. This is purely because I want to highlight what the exercise is looking at next. And for me, using a platform helps my dogs to maintain what I'm doing while I'm talking to the camera. So you can just do this on your floor, absolutely fine. Okay, don't need anything special for this. So the first thing we're going to do is actually something called a static stand or a square stand. And it's nice and simple. It's basically what Merlin's already doing, but it's teaching your dog to just stand nice and balanced and stand nice and still. Okay. Now, a lot of the time we start this, our dogs haven't done a lot of stand work already, unless they've done sort of beginners training with us where we do a lot of stands, but majority of dogs haven't done a lot, so they tend to sit down quite a bit. So we then are looking at building up the stand just for a few seconds to begin with, but you're aiming for anything between 10 and 30 seconds for a nice straight stand, okay? Your dogs will learn to balance themselves out. They'll learn that your stand cue means they need to work out where their feet need to go so they're more comfortable. And what that can do for you is it not only is actually working the muscles more than it looks like, you're working on core when you're doing this, then if you ask a dog to do a square stand and for any reason they can't, so if they keep sort of shifting about, they suddenly start sitting down, they don't normally, or they're holding their paw funny, it can highlight that there's a problem somewhere, so it can help you with injury prevention. So before it becomes a big problem for the vets to need to look at, you can actually see that something's not quite right with your dog. So it's a really handy one to be able to have. So you look very comfy there, darling. Could you go on that bed? So all you're going to do is you want to guide your dog into a nice stand position so that they look reasonably comfortable, and keep them like that for a few seconds. Okay, nice and easy. Now, if you've never taught your dog to do a stand before, chances are they're going to start off in a sit. All right, so from that sit position, Treat comes down to the chin, and you're just going to lure your dog forwards just enough that the bum comes up, and then you can treat them for that stand, okay? And then what we're looking for is just a few seconds in that nice straight stand and treating and praising. You notice my treat's coming in from level rather than here. If you bring your treat in from up above, a lot of the times your dog is going to sit, okay, because that's the body language. So let me just swap the dogs around and show you with Rippers Chippers. That's my good girl. So Ripley doesn't always sort herself out as well as Merlin. Merlin's done a lot of showing work when he was very, very young, didn't you, darling? So his stands are a bit neater. There's a good girlie. That's good. So if you find that when you bring your dog into the stand initially, if they're a bit uncomfortable, if you bring the treat under the chin slightly, they'll then kick them back legs back a bit, like that, okay? And then they can reposition themselves to get what is then a nice comfortable stand. Clever girlie, aren't you? So I'm going to do some from the front so that you can see what I'm doing. You're a very good boy, Merlin. Good girl. So down to the chin and then lure forward. Rippers, wait. Good girl. You wait for me. There's my clever girlie. So he's nice and straight there. Lovely and straight down the back there. Good girl. And then I'm going to let her move again, okay? You don't have to bend your knees, by the way. This is just how I teach, because otherwise I'm too tall for the camera, or if I fit in then you can't see the dogs. But it also works well because I've got tiny dogs. Anyway, haven't I? Yes, I have. If the dog goes into a down before you get the stand position, down, good boy, then you can then just lure them forward so they come up into that stand, or Ripley, down, lay down, or you can bring them into the sit and then into the stand position that way, okay? If need be, literally lure them, give them a treat so they do half a second stand, that's fine, and then gradually you can just build that up. So you can see this lovely position from Ripley now. When her head's facing the front, her spine is nice and straight. I can see she's nice and balanced. I can see that she's spreading the weight out over all her legs and that she's not wobbling. They're both holding that position perfectly still, which is what I'm after, even though they're panting a little bit. But there's no sort of wobbling or moving about, okay? So the static stand, the square stand, is where we start. It doesn't look like a lot, but actually your dog is working much, much harder than it appears. The muscles are working, they're working down the spine, so around the thoracic and lumbar spine. They're working all around this core area here. They are contracting and working those muscles to keep themselves standing really, really still. All right, so that's our first exercise. So you can have a go at that and do a few repetitions of that version. We're now going to go on something that's one of my favourite exercises to do. I just need you two to come off for a second though. You come off, Madam. Good boy. The way. Come on then. Choo-choo. So we're going to do something called a pause up. I'm going to use my aerobic step for this, but again, you could be using whatever it is you happen to have, okay? So I'm going to stand up because my knees are starting to hurt. So depending on what you have at home, ideally you want to have something that's sturdy, not wobbly. So if you do happen to have, if you're lucky enough to have fitness equipment like this, my phone can't find me, there we are. If you happen to have fitness equipment like this, which is wobbly, if it might be yours, it might be for your dog, might be for another dog. Ideally, we don't want to be using it at this time, okay? We want it to be nice and sturdy for your dogs so that they are working on keeping themselves steady and building up that strength, and then gradually things like the balance discs are something that come in later on, okay? So fitness and conditioning isn't all about these fancy equipment and getting your dogs to do tricks on them. It is actually about the steadiness and the foundations before we move on, okay? So just pop that away for a second. Now, they're already doing the exercise. I haven't asked them for it yet. The pause up. So we've already started by asking our dogs to step on a book or something low. Can I just swap you around a bit because Ripley's too small? There you go. So all we do is guide them to put the front paws up just for a few seconds, treat them, and then your dogs can come back off again. Off. There you go. And paws up. That's very clever, aren't you? Clever. Okay, off. So the reason why we ask them to put the paws up, treat, and then let them come off again is because once your dogs are putting the paws up, if you look at the angle of my two, if you can, I'll bring the camera back a bit, all their weight is on their back end. Now dogs typically work at around a 70-30 or a 60-40%, which means front end has between 60 and 70% of their weight and the pressure on the front end, and then the rear hand has between 30 and 40% at the back. So when you're asking dogs to stand how Merlin's currently standing, you're asking your dog's body to suddenly shift all the weight into the back, which isn't natural, okay? So the back end is now working much harder. So if they're not used to it, if they're young, if they're maybe older, if they've had any lower back, hip, pelvis, knee issues, ankle issues, anything like that, then you might find that they tire much more quickly. So muscle fatigue just means that then it's going to start being difficult to hold a position, it's going to be difficult to follow instruction, and they may then be sore the next day. So we don't want to overwork them, which is why we don't want a tall item, and we also don't want to keep them there for too long. Merlin is just going to stay there because he does a lot of this. Merlin actually has bilateral luxating patella, so both of his back knees have luxating patella, which is where the groove isn't quite right for the fit, and so there can be movement. But because I do exercises like this with him regularly, it means the muscles are nice and strong, it holds the kneecaps in place. He's now 8.5, he was diagnosed at 1, I was told he'd need surgery very soon. You wouldn't even know there was a problem. He doesn't have any problem with sitting, running, he never holds the leg out, it never pops out of joint, but I do have to keep his exercises up. Okay, so we then bring them back off, ask them to just do paws up, that's very good, and maybe see if they can go for a little bit longer, so a few extra seconds, and then we can guide them back off again. Okay, so it's nice and simple. Now if your dog hasn't done any paws up work before, you might find they're a little bit reluctant to put their feet on at first. So if they know the word paw, you could ask for a paw and reward just one, or you might find just luring them, they actually then eventually a paw is lifted, you can reward them just for doing that at first, and then gradually that paw might make contact, so we treat that, and then they'll start putting the second paw on, and then we can then be really, really pleased, praise, fuss, everything else, and then you'll get this beautiful paws up that Merlin is demonstrating so nicely for us. It's one of your favourites as well, isn't it? So again, repetition wise, if your dog hasn't done this before, then you don't really want to do too many, so just for a couple of seconds each time, you might do maybe 4 to 6 of these in a session, and then gradually you would build it up more and more. Okay, if you see some of the things these guys do, it's a bit different, isn't it? So it depends on what you've got at home, but again, it could be books, it could be a nice sturdy box of some sort, it could be a storage box, so you know, back door step, something like that. Depends on what you have, but something for your dogs to put their front paws on. Okay, we're going to, oh yes, we're going to look at some sidestepping now. So sidestepping for your dogs, not for us. Can I have that back, please? So just going to clear the floor. Now this is actually known as a doggy grapevine. It's very different from the grapevine that we might do in fitness or aerobics. And what it is, it's working with our dogs to get them moving sideways. So even if your dog can do sidestepping already, then this is still a new exercise for them. Okay, and we're going to take it very, very slowly and help them out. When your dog's learning something like this, it's more about the controlled action and them doing it properly and doing it well and quality, and less about how much they do in one go. Okay, so that's why the repetitions have been low. So when they do this, we are looking to see if we can get a slight movement with the back end, and then we stop and reward, and then we repeat it. Rather than, oh, I think they're doing it, I'm going to now move them the whole length of my house, and your old dog ends up again with that muscle fatigue. So what you want is we're going to bring our dogs across our body like so, into a stand position. We're going to have the treat on your dog's nose, so it's not too high, it's just nice and straight like so. We're going to bring the head away from us. We're going to slide a foot under the dog's body, and we're going to bring the treat back towards us, and then your dog will step out like so. Okay, so we'll do that from another angle for you. Hey, you rippers, chippers, come around there for me, baby girl. So, towards, treat goes out, foot slides under, treat towards you and lean, and your dog will move sideways in some way. Okay, I'll show you that with Ripley as well. Come on then, baby girl. So treat goes out, foot, treat goes in, and you get that nice backward movement. Okay, now remember, my guys have done this plenty of times. So they're going to do a nice even backward movement without needing a lot of help, but don't worry if your dog isn't doing it quite at that level. Remember, they've just done this a lot. So Ripley's almost 2, and she's been doing this since I brought her home at 10 weeks old. Well, not this, but she's done these sorts of exercises. Okay. So, excuse my dogs. So the grapevine, the doggy grapevine, is starting to work on your dogs moving a little bit in a sidestep in action. So we're working on abductors and adductors, which are the muscles in here, and that's what helps your dog move that leg outwards and inwards in an extension and flexion way. Careful. And it's a really, really nice way of working them. So it's good for maintaining strength and muscle, which then helps them for climbing if they're hiking somewhere. It helps them for pushing if they're doing things like agility, or sprinting out if they're doing things like hoopers and just free running. And it's really good also for dogs that have any hip issues, pelvic issues, or knee issues at all, because they're working that body gently. So again, you might have noticed there, I didn't get them to keep walking. I'm looking at the back end, I'm manoeuvring the front end with the treat. As the treat comes back towards me, I'm leaning on that leg, and then as that back end moves, or one of the legs at the back moves outwards, yes, there's your treat, that's what I'm after, okay? So it's just one little movement for now, and then gradually it becomes a much bigger exercise, okay? So the doggy grapevine, again, you're going to do one direction a few times, so maybe anything between 2 and 6 times, depending on your dog's level of fitness, and then swap them the other way and do the same thing the other side, so you're working on the abductor and adductor on both sides there, all right? So have a go with the doggy grapevines and see how your dog gets on with those. You two are mad, aren't you? You're a couple of loonies. We're going to look now at what is possibly something that most dogs can do, because it's often used in obedience, and that is just changing positions from a sit to a stand, okay? But we do it in a certain way. So sit to a stand, for most dogs, is literally sit and then lure forward into a stand, okay? In fitness terms, and I'm only going to go this very, very lightly for you because I don't want to obviously bore you too much. In fitness terms, we normally like the dogs to do a tucked under sit and a kick back stand. So what that tends to look like, I'll show you that with Merlin, is sit. So that's a tucked under sit and a kick back stand. So a tucked under sit is where they come forward into it, so they kind of tuck their pelvis under. And the kickback stand is where, rather than moving forward into it, they actually jump up with the back end like that into that stand position, okay? So when they're doing that, the front end's staying much more still and the back end is doing a lot more work. And actually with a lot of dogs, as they age, and age varies from breed to breed and depending on their lifestyle and genetics, back end tends to be what goes first, and often if they're not using it to need to do anything, then they use it less and less, and the less they use it, the more the muscle wastes, and it becomes a, you know, just a big vicious circle. So rather than going backward into a sit and forward into a stand like that, we're looking for sit, a tuck sit, good girl, and then a kick back stand like that. That was lovely, good girl. So don't worry too much if you haven't got that. If you want to go into fitness with your dogs, then that's obviously something that we can teach you, no problem at all. But if you want to work on that, then you're absolutely fine to do it. But all we're looking for right at this moment in time are several sits to stands with your dogs on the spot, aren't we? Okay, so let's bring you in here. So we're going to go sit, that's good, and stand, very good, and sit, good boy, sit Ripley. No. Good girl. And stand. Yes. And sit. Good. And stand. Lovely. What a clever pair you are. So a few reps of those as part of that exercise. The more that we do with Canine Fitness, that kind of an exercise gets used a lot more, and we start bringing it in with platforms and with front end raised or rear end raised. We start bringing in some of the balance equipment as well to do these things on, and we're gradually increasing how those muscles are working. And your dogs are knowing what muscles to use as well, which is really cool. So, sits to stand, again, not too many of those, but maybe 5 or 6 repetitions of sit stand in a row for one session, because you've got to remember the other things we've done as well. And then we're going to have a look at something called weight shifting, okay? So weight shifting, can again be done on the floor. I prefer to do it on a platform because it gives my dogs a nice edge to see where they're working, and it helps give them a way of doing the movement without actually walking around. So I'll show you what I mean. So I'll bring my platform back and yourself. And I mean, this could be, just move out the way, it'd be easy, wouldn't it, mate? Or get on it if you want. It could just be a finished board of wood that would work, because your dog would know they're off the ground. You know, whatever you have at home, or like I say, just do it on the floor is absolutely fine. So I just want to bring this so that it's in view a bit more. You knew I was moving it. So all we're going to do with the weight shift is we want our dog standing again. So the stand is quite important, and facing us. And all we're going to do, so you see it, Merlin's right on the edge there, is I'm going to get him to lean forward, and then he's going to go back to neutral again. I'll show you with Ripley because she's in the front now. So forward, and then she's going to go back to neutral. Forwards, and then she'll go back to neutral. Your stretch isn't as big as his. You can use your nose touch again if you prefer. Whatever works for you best is fine. Ripley, can you come round me, darling? Good girl. Okay, Merlin. So forward, back to neutral, forwards, back to neutral, forwards. Good boy. So it doesn't have to be a big movement. Where are you going, you young monkey? Stand, touch, stand up. Good boy. Touch. No. Yes. Yes. Good boy. So you see, if that's how he stands, when I ask him to lean forward, he leans, he goes back to neutral. Leans, goes back to neutral. Okay? If you were to try that yourself, so if you were to stand up and then literally lean and then go back to neutral, hold yourself in, hold your core in, obviously, and back to neutral. As you're doing that, you can feel where the muscles are actually working, okay? So again, really good for the core, really good for the body, really good for the legs, good for balance, coordination, body awareness, and so the reason why I like to do it on a platform is it gives them the nice clear angle of where the platform finishes. That's where I want you to be standing, and then all you need to do is lean and go back to neutral again, okay? So that's called weight shifting, because each time they lean forward, the weight is moving forward to the front end, and then as they go back, the weight is moving into the back end as well. So there's not a big movement, it's just enough that they're leaning and then going back to a stand again, okay? So that is our main exercises for you. So hopefully they make sense and they came across okay. We're just going to spend a moment next looking at some cool downs. And again, the first thing that you can do when you get to a cool down is just to let your dogs have a quick bit of walking about. So that might mean that you just pop to another room and back and they follow you. It could be you let them out to the loo again. But one of the best ways of cooling your dogs down in a natural way is to let them just move. So Ripley's going to go and take herself off to get a drink now, I suspect, and she'll probably come back in and have a big burp, as she normally does. But that's one way that she'll start cooling herself down, because she's naturally letting the muscles snap back into position and letting the body take the shape of the natural skeleton again, and doing everything nice and calm and easily, not cooling down too quickly. All right, so we'll be back in a second with some cool down exercises for you. So let's start cooling our dogs down then. So we've got 3 exercises for you, and like I say, you can use a little bit of time just to let your dogs walk around a little bit to help naturally cool down, either now or you can do it at the very end if you prefer. So we want to cool the dogs down gradually, naturally, the same as we would if we were doing exercise. And what it does is we use something called static or sometimes passive stretching, which is where we are guiding the dogs a lot more and can sometimes be a bit more hands-on, but I'm purposely doing exercises that aren't too hands-on for you, because obviously we've got a lot of dogs that potentially could be working on this and I haven't seen them, so the hands-on stuff I prefer to do when I'm actually working with the dog individually, to prevent any injuries from happening. But doing these sorts of exercises as a cool down, it helps promote relaxation for your dog, and it also helps with restoring the muscles. So like I said in the end of the main exercises, helps everything snap back to where it should be. So the first one we're going to do is guiding your dog to do a flip exercise. So all it is, you need a little bit of space. You're going to bring your dog in next to you and you're going to ask them to go a few steps with you. and then we're going to ask them to turn around. We turn as well, and we're going to walk a few steps in the other direction, okay? And then they turn, we turn, swap the treat, a few steps in that direction, and then we all turn again, and a few steps in that direction. Very nice. What are you up to, little girl? Ripley? Good girl. Flip. Good girl. Flip. And flip. And flip. There's a good girl. Okay, so it's nice and steady, nice and slow. If your dog knows how to do heel work, then obviously you don't have to bend down with them quite so much, do we? And flip. Here's a good girlie. And flip. You both going to do it? Flip. And flip. Yay! You're a funny pair. There you go. So just doing that a few times, and like I say, we're just luring the dog out. So basically what happens is wherever you and your dog starts, whether you're going up the room or back again, you're still in the same places. You don't swap sides. Okay, so you're here, your dog's here, you go up, you turn, you come back, you turn. Yeah, so you're staying in the same spot and you're both turning away. Your dog's turning away from you, you're facing your dog when you turn, so it's just a half turn each time. So the flip, again, a few of those, half a dozen of those to help your dogs. We need something for your dogs to do a paws up with, so I'm going to go back to using my book again. And all we're going to do here is ask your dogs to put their paws up, you know, and then we're going to do some nice cervical drop spine stretches. So paws are up, that's where we want them, and I'm going to bring the treat up and over the head. So he's stretching really high, but not in a way that makes him want to jump. Good boy. Go get that. Rippers chippers. Good girl. There's my good girl. Just come around there for me. Off. And when they do this, it's this cervical spine here that we're actually stretching out. Okay. So really, really good if you've been doing strenuous exercises where your dogs have had to maybe land on their front ends, if they've been jumping at all, if they've been going downwards for any reason, down hills or anything like that. That's a really nice one. So paws up and some cervical spine stretches. So just lowering with the treat so the head comes up and then back to neutral, head comes up and back to neutral again. Okay. And then our last exercise, oh yes, one of my favourites, another one of my favourites. I like these exercises. Off you go. Good girlie. Is something that some of the dogs watching might already be able to do. Don't worry, I'm going to show you what to do if they can't, and it's something called a play bow. Now the play bow stretch with dogs is a really nice one for an overall stretch. If they haven't done it before, don't worry if they don't get it quite the same as how mine do it. So Merlin, bend. That's not a bend, is it? Bend. Stop. Oh my God, Merlin's forgotten. Bend. Get your bum in the air. Good boy. So that is a play bow. Okay, when they're doing that, they're stretching out the front legs. Get your bum up. Good boy. They're stretching out the front legs, the elbow, the shoulders, all down the spine. They're stretching out the pelvis. They're stretching out the hips. You know, everything's being stretched. It's a really nice one to have. And you're a good girl, you're going to do it. Good girlie. Yes. Yes. So the way we teach it, if you haven't done this before, you want your dog in a stand. You want the treat on the nose, and then you're going to have your hand your side, but it's going to just tuck under here. Okay, particularly if you've got a male dog, you don't want your arm right under, but there, but on your side. So that's to stop them laying, and we're going to take the treat down towards the ground. Good boy. And then back into a stand again. The stand's important so they don't keep laying flat. And then down to the ground. Good boy. Back into a stand. And then do it the other way. Good boy. Stand and bend. Good boy. And stand. Good boy, you're very clever. So that's a really, really lovely stretch. And you can see I'm not taking very long with it. I'm literally guiding him into the position and then straight back out. It doesn't have to be for very long. Once your dog is doing things like this for longer, then you start asking them to hold the position a tiny bit longer, and that's why then it becomes a passive stretch, because we're actually guiding them into it. Bend. There's my good girl. And stand. And bend. So you can see this lovely stretch here. Stand. bend. What a good girl. Stand up. Now you might find when you first start this that your dog pretty much struggles going any more than here. That's fine, okay? It's still a stretch. Sometimes dogs just have to learn how to loosen up, Merlin. There's a good girl. So it might just be that they bend their elbows. That is absolutely fine. It's enough. There's nothing to bark at, is there? Come here. So that's your cool down. So now if you haven't already taken your dog out for a quick wander around, let them go out for a quick toilet, which is what these guys are going to do next, isn't it, mister? And then you can finish what you're working on with your exercises. If you have any questions at all, you can message me anytime. You can message via our Facebook page as well, at Dog Training for Essex and Suffolk. And this video is going to be via YouTube very soon, so you can be watching it on the replay as well. Take your time, don't rush. If you just want to do a couple of the exercises from each section, that's fine, and then gradually you can build up. So have fun, especially if you're not able to do the activities you normally do with your dogs, or if you've got a young dog or an adult, a senior dog that maybe could do with just being introduced to something a little bit different for them. Take it nice and easy, and hopefully you enjoy doing something a bit different with your dogs. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you to Gabby and everyone at Paawstival for letting me be part of this, and it's been a really good weekend so far. So enjoy, take care.